Hello, everybody. I'm Jay Nordlinger of the Renew Democracy Initiative and its publication, The Next Move. We will be holding a conference in Washington on December 9th and 10th, FOFCON, which stands for Front Lines of Freedom Conference. We will be hearing from the likes of David Smolansky, who is a Venezuelan politician, democracy leader, and exile. David, hello, and it's a pleasure to see you.
Thank you so much, Jay, for having me.
David, my guess is you never expected to live in exile, and I hope it won't be for long. What is it like, though, to be in exile? It must be terribly frustrating. On the one hand, you're relatively safe, I suppose, but on the other, you must be thinking about your homeland every day, every hour.
Well, I've been in exile for 8 years. I had to flee Venezuela 2017. I was a mayor of a municipality in Caracas, the capital of my country. The name of the municipality is El Atillo. For the same time, Jay, I was very vocal because of the ongoing situation in Venezuela. And the reaction for the regime was it issued illegal arrest warrant against me. And I went in hiding for 35 days until I was able to flee my country through Brazil, which I have to say I was able to do because I disguised as a seminarist. And I put all that on this context because,
Sorry, you were disguised as what,
as a
David?
seminarist,
A
like there
seminarian,
was
a seminary
seminarian,
student?
yeah.
Uh,
No, a seminarist that work with priests.
It will make a good movie someday, perhaps. Yeah.
So I always say that because it's to put in context how exile for freedom fighters, for pro democracy activists, in my case, even as a mayor, start start against your will, under extreme circumstances. Obviously, being separated from my family, be far from home, not being able to be in my country that I love so much. It's hard, but at the same time, I have learned and I've been inspired by other leaders and by other movements that you can reinvent yourself in exile, and especially in a world with that is interconnected, you could be very proactive in exile to impact internally because of the technology, and at the same time you could be an advocate for your democratic cause. So I have kept my work on Venezuela on different roles that we might talk later, and I do not see the day where I will be able to be back in Venezuela and enjoy a nation that is free, that is prosperous, that is democratic, and where millions can be reunited with the families.
David, I was thinking about Venezuela this morning and thinking about Cuba too. And that dictatorship in Cuba has lasted so long. It was on January 1st, 1959, that they took over the Castro movement, the communists. The United States in opposition all along. This dictatorship has unfortunately endured. Next January 1st, if my math is right, it'll be 68 years. And the Venezuelan dictatorship, maybe 25 years, depending on when you start. So
67
far.
Cuba and 27 Venezuela.
Mm. Um, why do you think that the dictatorship in Cuba has lasted as long as it has? And
Well,
how can Venezuela avoid this longevity, so to speak?
first of all, I feel deeply tied with Cuba because my father had to flee Cuba. He was born in Havana, and he all his childhood was under Castro regime. So he fled in 1970. And my grandparents lost everything in Havana. The regime expropriated their house, their company, and even their clothes. Everything that you can imagine, my family lost because of the communists in Cuba. So I feel deeply tied with that, and I hope that when we restore democracy in Venezuela, that could spark also pro-democracy movement in Cuba, because I see the fall of Maduro as the Berlin Wall moment of Latin America, to be honest. Because with that, we will only have two remaining dictatorships in the hemisphere: Nicaragua and Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
I think that
I'm interested, David. You don't count El Salvador yet. I think that's
yeah,
probably right. Not yet.
Cuba, and Nicaragua. In my
Mm-hmm,
opinion, there
mm-hmm,
are three dictatorships in this hemisphere.
mm.
Um, so when I say this, is because I'm deeply tied with Cuba. Because I am half Cuban, half Venezuelan. I mean, my dad is Cuban. My grandparents were, even though they were born in Ukraine, they they had to flee Ukraine as well because of the communists. They became Cuban citizens.
So,
So
David, were those the Smolanskys? Did the Smolanskys come from Ukraine?
yes, yes,
Uh-huh.
sir.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So three
That
generations that have escaped three communist regime on three different parts of the
you
world
have
in
to
a
keep
hundred years.
running. You Smolanskys have to keep running. Uh,
Well,
Doesn't sound right.
my grandparents couldn't go back to Ukraine when they died just before the Soviet Union was disintegrated and Berlin Wall fell. My father has not been able to go back to Cuba, but that's my driver to for me to go back to Venezuela and keep fighting for Venezuela.
Well, the Venezuelan dictatorship has quite a coalition behind it. They're part of a big coalition, right? This dictatorship is backed by the Cuban dictatorship, Russia, Iran, China, Nicaragua. What I often hear from dissidents is that dictators are very good at allying with one another and cooperating with one another. And Democrats, advocates of democracy, ought to be at least half as good at cooperation. Do you share this view?
Well, first of all, I think it's easier for dictators to align that for Democrats, because obviously, if Putin decides tomorrow to send weapons to Venezuela, he doesn't have to ask for anyone to approve. He just sent that. Um, if Iran wants to send money to Venezuela, they don't have the regime doesn't have to ask to anyone. The democracy have the balance of power, because you have Congress, you have a justice system, which in my opinion is the most important institution that any nation should have, because you have to be strong, you have to be independent. And yes, they are aligned. They cooperate among themselves. They have learned. Having said that, we have to defend democracy always, and we don't have to feel intimidated by these bad actors. I think that there are so many freedom fighters across the world that are doing incredible efforts in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, when you still have Belarus, in Latin America, that we have to work together for having more nations free.
And David, this is the impression I have, and you tell me whether it's true. Hugo Chavez was unfortunately a talented man, a darkly talented man, a master populist, almost a sorcerer, clever, glib, a performer. He had the dark arts of demagoguery and populism. It seems to me that Nicolas Maduro is a dullard, not very smart, just a brute, a completely unappealing person propped up by these other dictatorships. Does that match with what you have seen or not?
I always say that Chavez is the father of the future, right? Chavez, at the end of the day, used democracy to destroy democracy. He had the tools that democracy provide to conquer power, and once he was in power, he left the system almost in shatters. He opened the borders to start working with terrorist organizations. and drug cartels from Colombia, and now the regime in Venezuela has become a cartel, literally. Um, Second, as I said, he worked with Cubans since day one, so they started to smash the media, the private companies, the members from the Democratic opposition. So I think he did the work that gave Maduro the 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 next chapter to commit the atrocities that he has committed. But both are equally responsible on how we got to this point. I think Chavez was lucky in some point because he had a oil barrel in $100, $90, $80 for some years when he was in power.
David, you anticipated my next question, which was, and maybe an unanswerable question, or maybe the answer is both. Uh, has oil been a curse on Venezuela or a blessing? More
What a
one
good
than the other, or
what a good question, because I
50-50, or I
it's
mean,
a very good question, and it's a debate in Venezuela during the years of dictatorship and during the years of democracy. I think it's a blessing, but the blessing has to come with people responsible managing that resource. You've seen other nations across the world that have a lot of oil, and they are nations that have access to healthcare, education, infrastructure. Uh, for example, Norway, just to mention one example. The U.S. have a lot of oil, right? And so Canada as well, in which is, by the way, Alberta, very heavy, like is in Venezuela. So I would say that it's a blessing, but you need to have the people responsible leading the resources that could come from oil. And at the same time, oil needs to be the driver to diversify the economy. Because I think one of the mistakes that we have always had is that everything relies on oil. And I think oil should be the driver to diversify the economy. Venezuela is a unique nation to develop other areas, gas, gold, minerals, uh, tourism as well, agriculture, fishing. So this is the vision that we're having for the future.
let's talk Nobel Peace Prize, which has been awarded, will be conferred on Maria Corina Machado on December 10th. What do you suppose the impact will be of this Nobel Peace Prize on the Venezuelan freedom movement?
Well, I think it's already inspiring millions of Venezuelans. When we knew about it, as Maria Corina said, this is not a recognition to her. This is a recognition to a whole nation, to a whole movement that has sacrificed so much in lives, in freedom, in exile, uh, for for uh, for the restoration of democracy. Obviously, this has put Venezuela in a global stage. We have taken this recognition with in a very responsibly. It is an honor, but at the same time represents a commitment to to end the job, and the job is to have a free and democratic Venezuela. But I'm so proud of Maria Corina Machado. I have known her for at least 15 years. When she was a congresswoman, I was a mayor. We started to work together from the same district that I was elected mayor. She was also elected congresswoman. She has always been courageous, uh, coherent, very strategic. The capacity of strategy that Maria Corina has is very admirable. Many people for years underestimated her, and she has stepped up to every challenge that we have had that have been very hard. She has stepped up, and she has always done this with principles and values. So she's an honest person. She believes deeply on transparency in the public service, and has been an honor to work alongside with her during these years.
Well, David Smolansky, a couple more for you. It seems to me that freedom advocates everywhere are looking nervously to Ukraine, wondering how it will turn out. And if the Ukrainians, they've made this marvelous stand already, if they can keep their country, if they can preserve their independence, if they can repel the invader, if they can make this stand last, that will be an encouragement and inspiration to other people struggling for freedom. Is that your idea as well? Does the Ukraine war mean something in the minds of dissidents elsewhere?
Well, I again, this is also close to me because my grandparents were from Ukraine, and what Russia has done is it's brutal. It's an atrocity. They have committed thousands of war crimes. Putin is an assassin, and we want the Ukrainian independence and sovereignty being respected. Ukrainians have been brave. Also, many underestimated them, and when the invasion started in February of 2022, like some people said, respected people say, in 48 to 72 hours, Ukraine is going to be under control of Russia. Russian troops are going to be able to conquer Kiev, and here they are, almost 4 years after resisting. And
Amazing.
this is a resistance not only for Ukraine, but a free and democratic world. So we wish them to keep fighting, to keep resisting, and we share the values of sovereignty and freedom and democracy.
David, for so long, for so many years, Venezuela was seen as a model country in South America, a model of democracy, of prosperity, the way a country ought to do it, be like Venezuela. And it unraveled. It fell apart so quickly, it seemed to me, in the space of several years, right? That many of the population were starving. I think over 8 million people now in exile. I wonder if it makes your head spin too, that it happened so fast. And I feel this is something like a cautionary tale for other nations.
Well, Venezuela unfortunately has become a landmark on how democracy is used to destroy democracy. When Chavez was elected in 1998, he was elected in a system where you have independent institutions, free media, political parties were allowed to exist. You didn't have any political prisoners. And he was elected, and everyone respected that election. I have to say that 6 years before, Chavez led two coups d'etat, and both failed. And on those two coups d'etat, innocent Venezuelans were wounded and killed. So he already showed at the beginning that he was willing to use violence to conquer power. So when we had that, then he started to co-opt the justice system. He expanded the numbers of judges, and the judges that were appointed were loyal to him. Then he went after the oil company and to be run under a doctrine of the political party of the regime. So he get rid of almost 20,000 oil workers, many of them very, very high skilled, admired globally. And they, from one day to another, they lost their job and they had to flee Venezuela. Then censored the media. He shut down TV stations, radio stations, newspapers. Then he did what Fidel Castro did during the 60s, expropriate and nationalize any type of company, land that you can imagine, from coffee grows to food factor industry, anything that you can imagine. Obviously, oil services and energy services were expropriated by Chavez. Banks, electricity company, the water supply company, anything that you can imagine. So that is why I always say that Chavez is the father of the future. So when with that you were weakening democracy, you started the backsliding democracy until the moment that democracy was totally lost. Our liberties were completely smashed, and now you have almost 9 million people who have fled Venezuela, which is the same size of in terms of population of Arizona, and almost the same amount of people that countries like Hungary has, or is twice Croatia. So imagine how big this migration is, that is the size of an entire nation. So um, yeah, it has become an example on how democracy was used to destroy democracy. But I'm hopeful that we can have a transition soon. And as soon as this transition begins, we were promoting that it has to be orderly, democratic, and peacefully. We will have a nation with strong and independent institutions, with free media, with access to justice for everyone, free market, where private property is going to be respected, with free and free elections, and especially with conditions for those Venezuelans who have left to go back, be part of the rebuilding, and be reunited with their family. That's my
Well,
goal, and that's my motivation every day that I start my work here in Washington, D.C.
well, you will know this old Jewish expression, from your mouth to God's ear. And I also think of another expression I learned from Leopoldo Lopez. Um, let's see if I have this right. El que se cansa pierde.
Yeah,
He who tires loses. So, David, thank you for not tiring and
no,
doing this work.
we will keep doing it, as we said, hasta el final, until the end.
Perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Jay Nordlinger of the Renew Democracy Initiative and its publication, The Next Move. Our FOFCON, Frontlines of Freedom Conference, will be in Washington on December 9th and 10th. We've been listening to David Smolansky, Smolansky. David Smolansky, strength to your hands, sir. And thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.